So hello, good afternoon, evening, everyone. We are back with the sixth of this series of talks, the sixth Wild Talk, as part of a Wildcare exhibition that Ana Jara and I are presenting at as part of the Porto Design Biennale this year. And we've been having a luxurious, I think, collection of people coming and spending some time with us, and it's been great. All of these talks are available through the YouTube channel. Recordings of these talks are available through the YouTube channel of the PDV, and people can check them. And we hope that they will keep on producing questions and responses. And I think in many ways they are progressively becoming more interwoven and interrelated, and we are referring backwards and forwards to it. So it's really cool. And we have the pleasure of kind of finishing this series, because it's the sixth and it's the last one of the ones that have been arranged and scheduled. And we have the pleasure of finishing it with someone that is really special. Tomi has been engaged with architecture and design and history and many kinds of different collaborative occupational projects. Also wild projects involving caring and loving with and caring and loving others. They have also recently led an experimental project that initiated and developed what they've called the Tower of Love, an unfolding timber construction of rescued materials that would hold us and enable various forms of learning and intimacy, somehow welcoming everyone that was involved in the project to participate actively in shaping it. So I'm really excited to talk about that project, but also to talk about many other things that they've been involved in. Tomi is proudly unserious and kept busy encountering friends late into the darkness and mud, they say. That they would call that a politics of endurance and engagement. I'm really excited to talk about endurance and engagement in those terms. They are currently teaching at the Willem de Kooning Academy in Rotterdam, and they also cooperate in this place, the bike shop, the bike workshop, Do Het Zelf Werkplaats in Rotterdam North in the Netherlands, where they live. So please welcome Tomi Hilsee.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me, both of you. It's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, very pleasure to be part of this exhibition. Which, yeah, I would have loved to have gone, but from what I have seen, from what you've sent to me, it's fantastic, and I've enjoyed all the other talks, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really a pity that we haven't been able to make it work, to have physical encounters with all the guests in Porto, and to be able to share the space of the exhibition and maybe host these talks there. It would have been fantastic, no? But yeah, I mean, we have to kind of deal with the limitations, and in a way, there's also interesting dimensions to these talks that take place at this distance. So I think that one of the things that we can use to start, and I think it's also fair. We've been trying to do that for everyone that has joined these talks, is to a little bit in a way explain how or why we come to this decision of including some of your work in the exhibition and asking you to talk with us and share this time with us. So in your case, there was this Tower of Love project, which was just maybe, if you want, a piece of the graduation project that you were developing at TU Delft, and at least in my mind, there were lots of ways in which this project was caring about various things and various life forms. So it was caring about the people that were participating in it, and caring in a very kind of active way, and including them and hosting them and enabling them to just be part of it in a way that was not so much being part of it, but almost just making it. Also caring about the materials and the things that had to be found and then brought to the place. caring about the ecologies of the already existing ecologies in the place where you were doing that, and yeah, caring about memories and caring about a few other things, and that's obvious in my mind, that makes the project like fit very well in the exhibition. There were also very wild things while you were doing this, which was caring and loving for life forms and for things. The project was extremely wild in its relationship to various institutions and various institutional things, we could call them, like of course TU Delft as a really powerful and big institution that has its protocols of arrangement of graduation projects and architecture and how that should be conducted, and the architectural discipline itself that you were of course seeing differently, to put it mildly. Land property, the kind of idea of site was also a thing that you were being kind of wild towards, as if we see like land properties institution. So I think that the project actually like fits really, really well. It's one of the projects that fits the best in the exhibition in terms of like not illustrating, but like almost like performing this wild care idea. Or at least this is what we thought. And now, of course, you have the space to just tell us if you agree, or maybe you think that we are just completely like misunderstanding. No? But we hope that you agree at least partly.
Yeah, I mean, I pick up and see those threads, and I very much also like the conversation that was being had with Jack about this this space of the wild as being, you're in the wild when you don't know if it's like going good or going bad, right? If you are moving towards some sort of resistant kind of ontology, or if you're moving back into a sort of colonial recuperative thing. And maybe this relation that is happening between the relation to these institutions, which of course are always there, right? I mean, there's no outside of those institutions, right? You're always in some sort of relation to some forms of power in some way, right? I mean, if you're squatting the land, you're still in relation to the fact that you had to squat it because there's a land property ownership regime that is ubiquitous. You're in relation to the industries that are kind of producing these materials that we're dependent upon getting, or in this sense, I'm in relation to the architecture profession and how that's working with its sort of protocols, or also what TU Delft is expecting of people as a graduation project, and so on and so forth. I mean, right? So you're always in relation to those things, while at the same time, the sort of love and care towards or with the people that you're making something with, or that place, or the bugs or the mud, or the memories, or the things that are like jointly affecting you all. Of course, those are all also there, and those relationships are also never equal, right? So you're constantly, like, when you're having an encounter, let's say, with these forces, these processes of formation, right, that have kind of like brought us to where we or are part of like forming that world. And you're also the relationships you have with other people. That's an ongoing encounter, right? Which is something that can't be avoided in a way. So that becomes a bit like the core of the project, is this sort of taking attention towards how do we pay attention to those relationships, and how do we stay within those encounters, right? Which is maybe this, I don't know, maybe some way it's this holding or relay that you've been talking, that is constantly perpetually there, right? So that becomes the project, right? In a way, how do you kind of take attention to to all of those things and people that you're there, and also these forces. And I think that space of having to pay attention to that is a form of wildness in a way, because you don't know exactly where it's going to go, you don't know how it's going to go, you don't know actually if those relationships are going to become problematic or hierarchical or coercive or destructive, or if they're going to lead you to somewhere else, you know. So I think there was this shift to thinking about how architecture is made through these friendships and relationships, where we're always a constant work at work, or these, you know, emotions, or in relation to these institutes. Yeah, it's quite like uncontrollable, untamed type of wildness in a sense, maybe. Yeah.
Just before it slips away, I think I would like to just pick up on something which I think in a way it's interrupting the flow of what you're saying, and I know that it's going to be lost. That's why I want to kind of just touch upon it before we move on, because I think, of course, that the core and the kind of the loving core of the project is in those things that you were saying, in these kind of ways of developing forms of attention to those things that are and life forms that are involved, and that is not a form of resistance to anything, but it is actually a form of engagement with something. So it's a form of engagement with bugs, mud, memories, friends, encounters that go on, and so on and so on. Much more than a form of resistance to an institution or to a way of dealing with a graduation project. So it's almost like, what I want to say is that there's a kind of wild performance which has to do with what you were saying, no? That this developing of an attention is what's done with the wildness. So that would be the wild performance, but then this has also like wild effects, or just to call them something, which has to do with actually resisting the institution, questioning the institution. So it's almost like maybe it's an accident of your attention to the other things, but I think it's very interesting, and it's also actually really powerful. And in a way, I would like to say that it would be important to care for that as well, because it opens. Yeah, I just find the kind of institutional protocols, particularly in relationship to certain ways of administering a graduation project in architecture, I find them harmful, as you know. And then if we just ignore the fact that what you were doing was actually resisting this harm, then the harm will just continue, you know? Like unchanged or unmodified. But I just hope that maybe there's a way in which reflection on that harmful administration could also like have an impact and be a form of care for others. No, not for you or for us, but for the others that will come. No? And I know it's a very tiny thing, maybe in the context of your project, but I think it's just something that I wanted to mention. I don't know.
You mean like the harm? You mean the harm of this administrative procedure kind of can continue if in a sense that if it's only focused on this like form of resistance? Is that what you mean?
No, what I mean is that precisely the opposite. That what you did was in a way saving you from the harm, like or minimizing the harm. You were able to do a project that was different, and you did it because you cared about other things, and you found a way to just make it work, you know, to make it work even though the project was not fulfilling and engaging with most of the protocols of the institution. And I think I've seen lots of people like break down and be like in trouble, physical and mental trouble.
Yeah.
Because of having to actually deal with the protocols, and maybe because they didn't know, or because they have no access to like the ways and the modes of doing things that you have developed. And I think that would be a very interesting kind of like source of in a way, care and love, like sharing, in a way, knowledge. How do we do this? No, and of course, you're not going to like make a book about that, but somehow, like, this kind of institutional resistance, I think, is important because it prevents harm in that sense.
Yes. I in that sense, I completely agree, because yeah, I mean that was the reason. I mean, right? There's two reasons mainly for why I would want to do it. Is one, because I was going to do it anyway, and another because like I would not have managed to have done what I was supposed to do. Right? I would have broken down if I had to sit there on a computer and draw these CAD drawings, which I think is just madness, and it just is like. Or having to tick these boxes and you know, I mean, of course, we still had to defend what we were doing and why, and find out the ways for doing that. But yeah, it is a type of knowledge that, yeah, needs to kind of be, but it's shared by doing it with the other people. I think that's also where it kind of increases the capacity to do it, right? That, I mean, I don't know for me, but I just can't like work alone. I find it like impossible. I have no energy to do it. I mean, I'm very much like into the Spinoza thing of the love and care, which is very much about increasing your joint capacity to act, right? And that is the joy as this like accumulative verb, which just keeps growing in this kind of like ever more like powerful force. But so I don't know. I was thinking when you were first talking about like this hosting and care of the materials, the people, and the memories, and so on, and the sort of wildness in relation to the institutions. I think the wildness is kind of cutting through both of those things at once, right? So I mean, it's like this engagement is at the same time a resistance, and it's not so much like separable from each other. There's this. Like this, as soon as you shift away from the sort of protocoled ways of doing things, which is, okay, we need to make contracts, and we are architects, and we make visual diagrammatic contracts about, you know, the codified relationships between this, that, and the other, and then you like are obligated to fulfill those things, right? Or that's also what happens within collectives. You have like this very moralistic duty as to like a certain role or methodology of how things should happen, right? Or that we're working together, that is in and of itself like good, right? So then it's a shift away. Okay, we won't work so much with these protocols, but we're going to start from the things that we care about, right? And I want to come with, I want to meet you because I'm curious about you, and you're curious about me, and we want to meet each other, and we want to extend to each other, and then in the middle of that, maybe there's something that we want to do together, which extends our ability to get closer to those things that we care about, like together, or like dwell or endure within that situation. And maybe that, and maybe not, it's not even so much about what we make, but it's this process of, I want to come close to you, you want to come close to me. And we can do that by like playing with this wood and the mud in the middle of the night and with these joists. And so, right. So it's, and then that can like, it's producing something while it also is holding the thing itself. It's the doing it is the creation of the doing, and it's the creation of this of like the possibility for this for entities to be created, right? Which is also a creation of an entity. So it's like this self-fulfilling like positive circle in a way. And so I think once you take this shift onto, we're going to put attention onto how that happens. How can we have those types of relationships, those friendships, which is more than just, I mean, maybe it's very much a body-to-body relationship, but it's also all of the things that brought us there, all the things that are holding us there within this environment where we have effective memories and griefs and weather, and it's cold and so on and so forth. And when you're shifting onto that type of thinking about how you're doing something, how architecture is being made, it's both this engagement and resistance at the same time, perhaps, and you don't know how that's going to go, and that's a bit of the skill, right? I don't know. Maybe.
I think we have in our curatorial proposal this idea of these stories would capture, or this selection of stories would capture the architecture that holds us in the brokenness we share. I think this story of the Tower of Love is pretty much about holding in a world that is creating separations, and so you are putting together, watching the relationship or being inside the relationship that makes the movement. At least it's what I read from this work. You know, you go to this place, this building is using materials that are appearing there, some of them in the muddy fields of Holland, these terrains of near the airport, which is kind of also interesting because I mean, I imagine that you were feeling these airplanes coming and going, and this wind and these atmospheres. So this architecture is about relating with almost with places that are kind of very unstable. Is it accepting to be in a place of instability, of not knowing, of not knowing what is going to happen, not knowing how you're gonna relate and how things can go wrong or good, or more or less not knowing if you are going to be able to build or if something is going to happen. I feel like is kind of I mean, it has to do with life itself, and I relate this very much with the theater. But when you do not know, and then you have a play, and you are gonna do it together. I don't know, but I mean, this idea for a tower was somehow, because it's kind of I've been to your website, and there is this text on a dream of this tower. So this is also very internal. It is together, but also very internal, as a space of dreams and connection with yourself. So maybe these movements of inside, outside are important and wild.
Yeah. I think yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of discussion that we've had for a while on also this sort of memory, or memory as it relates to mourning, and how that's very much also connected with a sort of driving or like mobilizing force for this kind of desire to want to get closer to each other, or this desire to care, which is in some way maybe also linked to this sort of instability of the world, or also maybe even an instability of a particular site, as it might relate to its sort of like political history. I mean, this weird site which is between 3 highways and the runway of the airport, and it's kind of like this leftover land, and it's quite unadministered in a sense, because it's on the edge of the city, and it's quite undesirable.
You normally don't take care of these places. They are places, wasted places.
It's funny because in Holland everything is so administered, and everything is so charted out, like quite precisely, that it's very hard that you have things which are like intentionally forgotten. I don't know, there's some kind of like weird oxymoron that it's like kind of like it's not forgotten, but it's forgotten or something. I don't know. Like it's there, and everyone knows it's there, but somehow it's not as it's a place where you could maybe do something and people wouldn't want to administer it as actively as other spaces. I mean, the tower is very much out in the open. It's not like hiding, because there's nowhere to hide really in this country, is what it feels like. But yeah, there's something strange about this. I mean, the municipality. I mean, I didn't get permission to build it, for instance. It's in a park, but it's not a park which is so well defined on the maps. It's like technically a park at best, right? And there are people that are come there to like prune the trees and so on. But beyond that, there's not much to it, and there's a bunch of kind of funny rhythms of people going there to walk the dogs and to fish and camp out there all night and these types of things. But it's also like a peat bog that was like extract, because the land here, you can pick it up out of the ground and burn it. So you had like these periods of time where the whole landscape was being excavated to be burnt, and then when it was excavated, they would turn into lakes. So you have, I mean, the whole history of Netherlands is like the land is created at the same time that it's turned into private property. So you don't have this sort of enclosing of the commons that you might have elsewhere. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, within the context of all of those things, and you have these increasing development pressures and so on and so forth, from the airport and from these industrial terrains. And I'm maybe not sure exactly where I'm going with this anymore, but there's
no, but this is the situation, the ground where you grow the what is going to happen. So what happened was in this field that has some sort of unexpectedness or identity that is I mean the mud is such a hard place to be and to build. So I don't know, but you picked some kind of space that in the middle of flat land, or it's kind of the land where it would be more difficult to be, or I don't know. This is a question.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it was picked because it was kind of possible, because of this sort of loophole of this place not being so actively administered, because of its periphery, and because it's between these highways, and it's not such a desirable
margin or
place.
Some sort of
it's a marginal space, and of course everything in the Netherlands, you have to deal with the technicities of how something happens, right? So I mean, that's another thread that we could pick up on, is that it's not this wildness is not necessarily anything happens and it's random, and we go there and we don't know what's going to happen, and then just something happens. But it's a sort of wildness of not knowing how we're going to make it happen, but we're moving towards, we want this tower to stand there 10 meters up, and we want to be able to not have it fall over, right? So there's a sort of dealing with the technicities, and you want to work with the mud and the clay and the beams, and figuring out how do we get these posts in the ground, and how do we do that together, and how do I manage, not to manage, but how do I make it so that people can join, right? How do I make it accessible? How's there enough things planned? Do you think ahead to have the certain tools and so on and so forth? So there's that element of also dealing with the site and the mud, which is a sort of working with what the mud wants to do, and then the mud is also kind of co-producing the thing, because the mud has knowledge of what it wants and how it wants to grab onto things, and how it wants to like hold those posts which are in the earth. But there's also, I think, going back to what the site brings in with you, and also what is happening with this inside and the outside and the dreams that you were saying. I think there's a sort of like kind of longer instability of how we relate to these, let's say, institutions or precarity, you know, that we have to like work in such ways, and we have to work in relation to, you know, whatever systems of power, right?
Yes.
Which is a sort of constant like rupture, which like, I don't know, in my life has just disrupted so much of my relationships and friendships because of this persistent instability, which just seems like nonstop, which affects us in ways more than I think we can like measure, actually. And then that's also what I think I would connect into with this like mourning or grieving, which is a mobilizing force for me, because I think this like grieving about like this intangibility of the things that they're like hard for us to like grasp, or hard to like get into, or hard to like be able to like stay somewhere or endure, or decide that you want to stay in a certain place or another place, or if you want to build something in another place. I mean, I think this is like a very powerful like emotions of like grief. And I mean, you can also grieve very specific tragedies, because I mean, you can also say that we've just had a cataclysmic like processual on-stop like tragedies also.
It is almost
and
like,
and then I think, yeah.
No, it is
So
not,
somehow this is a part of also co-producing the thing with you,
yeah.
in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's almost like if you have to have these spaces internally, then you can deal with them externally, and so on. So if you stay there and you are talking about grief and mourning and these kinds of spaces that are emotional, then you can work with them spatially and in this togetherness with a group of people. So, I mean, this is kind of a reciprocity that is finding its way inside, outside, and this is for me really interesting, because somehow these materials are not very common in
yeah, I mean, I've always felt, for me, like, to deal with the, like, let's say, the brokenness of this world is not to like, I don't want to like resolve that brokenness or cure it or make it whole or like build something which is then like the place you go in and you're like cured. But it's like, I just want to like engage with this brokenness, and I want to like feel it more, actually. Maybe I'm like addicted to pain or something, but I mean,
you dare to go there to this
no,
space.
I mean, I feel compelled, or I feel like I have to, or I also feel that's what mobilizes us. I think like a lot of political movements are also like very strongly acted by like this inability to deal with the brokenness of the world. You have to do something about it. And for me, I think in architecture, that's, I mean, for me, I deal with it architecturally. I mean, I want to build things, and I want to build things with other people, right? I mean, I think in that way that the act of these building things is a mediator for me to kind of move through or get close or inhabit or dwell or endure or stay in this brokenness, which I think to me, I think it's quite like a wild emotion, like this grief, because I think it's one of the emotions, I think, which is very untamable, right? I don't think it's something that you don't control, or you don't resolve, it's always a work at work, you know. It's not something that finishes. So I think there's something powerful in the sharing of this sort of acknowledgement of its uncontainability, and of course it's like all these things, it can cut both ways, right? This sort of memory or nostalgia, I mean, it can also lead towards fascist things in certain ways, right? So I mean, that's also the wildness of this attentiveness, which I think is also the how we respond to instability is also a sort of, you know, I think it can cut both ways. I don't know. I mean, just to map out a few of the things that I think were kind of like flowing through the kind of emergence of these encounters that were like constituting this thing that was happening, which I think I'm trying to map out somehow that, of course, the process of this formation, which is also not like resolvable, is the thing that I'm like kind of interested in, right? This sort of flux of emotions, sort of flux of history, the sort of flux of current politics, the sort of flux of friendships, all of which are kind of, you know, I don't know, maybe I used to, you know, maybe I'm using the term wild too much, but in the sense that you can't categorize them so well and you can't predict them so well, and you certainly can't draw them and plan them ahead of time. I think that's sort of the fallacy of many architectural projects is this desire to, or this compulsion to kind of say, what are the 5 problems and how do we respond to these 5 problems? And let's make a proposal and send it to the planning authorities to get approval. And then we make a document that says, okay, build it this way. And now the 5 problems have been addressed and solved. You know, it's like it's, so this is the thing, which I think that's just, for me, if I had to work that way, it just produces anxiety and it's destructive because it doesn't engage with anything that I experience in my life. So it's,
yeah, I think the connections you've been establishing now with grief and the wild are really beautiful, and this idea of a work at work that is uncontainable, but it's also like taking quite some effort to stay put in a way, to endure through it, and it at the same time it somehow provides a satisfaction of intimacy in the sense of like feeling that closeness to that thing that you're trying to remember, and even though it hurts, no? So that I think that is like something that maybe we could try to work out, or to keep in mind and try to work out in various ways. For me, there is another one thing that was appearing in the way that you were describing this focus on the process and the process of getting closer to others while you're doing this thing, which is almost, it feels at times when you're saying it that it is a kind of also relay between caring and not caring, in the sense of having to be open to whatever results, and at the same time, of course, not wanting whatever results, because you want it to be nice, no? You want it to be a tower, and you want the tower to work, and you want the tower not to fall, and you want the tower to be in relationship with the mud and with lots of other things. But at the same time, you're open, because what you really care for is this relationship that you're developing, which in a way don't care about what the tower looks like or might look like in the end. So this kind of, I think it's really, really powerful, this relationship between care, engagement, and openness, and in a way also as a kind of double-sidedness sometimes being open means that you don't have to or cannot care about certain things. You need to kind of leave them open, and in other moments you actually need to care about certain things very much and not leave them so open anymore, because that's what care means, no? So that kind of rhythm of caring, not caring. And then just the last thing I want to say in relationship with that is how that I think changes the speed of architecture, so that it takes time. That to dwell in those processes probably like requires slowing down, at least sometimes, some things, no? Enduring in being with someone and being open to not maybe doing too much yet, no? Something like that. I don't know if you can like relate to any of those things.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, of course, it's a great thread, which I could also like ramble about again for a while. But no, I think this is open. I think this. I mean, I think this is good. I mean, I think I think it touches on actually some of the kind of controversial like aspects of care or openness that I think are even like discussed even in more of the kind of leftist kind of collectives or architecture. Because I mean, I mean, in one simple thing, I think this total openness. I mean, I think it has to be a fallacy. Also, this total equality has to be has to be a fallacy. Or yeah, we need to be much more clear about what that means. And I think that's why it's a focus. It's a shift away from. I mean, I think as you both know, I think a shift away from certain methodologies or forms of behavior or forms of care or forms of how we do things, right? It's a shift away from that and maybe onto some of the things that we talk about so much about, like these modes of attention or modes of commitment to presence or something like this, which is a different than a commitment to a specific form of behavior or relationship. So that's again not also like, I think it goes against these sort of models of collectives which say that, okay, you have this amount of people and then this is the consensus decision-making process and you go through these things and and then you will have a democratic process at the end. So I think it's also a shift away from those things. Because every situation is different, right? And every relationship is different, every encounter is different. And I think architecture for me has always been fascinating because it's both hierarchical and non-hierarchical. Like it's hierarchical in the sense that it's also an ecology in the sense that there are specific relationships that matter. It's not that everything is related to everything, but there are specific things are related to specific other things. Like this beam has a specific relationship with that post. If we want it to be there, we need to think about where the weight and the tension and the compression is moving through these things. Otherwise, it's going to snap. I mean, unless you want it to snap, it's, you know, you should think about these things. So there's a hierarchy of that relationship that needs to be attended to, right? But then at the same time, there's a sort of non-hierarchy in the sense that there's so many layers of information going on that you're thinking about all of these things all at the same time, right? You're thinking about, how does this beam get here? What does this person want? What is this person feeling right now? All of a sudden, they look more anxious. So maybe I should like let this beam fall. So I should pay more attention to them. And right. So there's just the web of very specific relationships that make up this very like non-hierarchical mess of relationships, right? So it's both of those things at the same time, which I think is what makes it very wild, you know. To be in that mode of thinking about everything all at once and thinking about the specific technicities, it's a lot. I mean, that's also why I like it, because it's so complicated. So I maybe I'm like meandering a bit, but yeah, I mean, I don't have like a you know, I don't have like a necessarily an answer or formula for how to and I don't have a resolve this type of thing of how to have these open encounters that are not totally open, because you do want specific things to happen, because it's so different situation to situation. I think that's also what makes it beautiful. This is also what happens at the bike workshop that I'm operating, is that every person that comes to fix their bike there has a very different knowledge about bikes, or they have different abilities, or, you know, someone's hand might be broken, and then you can't be of a protocol of like, okay, well, it's a do-it-yourself workshop, so you have to do it yourself. You know, it's like, okay, this context is different, and maybe I want to help this person, and maybe they know some things, and I need to like see where's the limits of your knowledge and where's the limits of my knowledge, and I need to like pay attention to that situation, you know. And what do we care about more? Do we care about fixing the bike? Do we care about becoming friends, or can we do both at the same time? And so it's, but I think there's also another level of this kind of total openness, which can maybe be related to like care, which I think can also become a sort of like, it can be sometimes mutually like destructive in a sense, right? Like we also, of course, need to have boundaries. You know, I can't, you know, in some sense, I can't invite 50. I mean, I can't invite 50 people to the tower at once. You know, I can't say it's totally open. Everyone comes whenever, because if 50 people come, I can't pay attention to all 50 people at the same time. And then it's not going to be nice for you. It's not going to be nice for me, right? And I don't know. I think there's a. I think care also comes in a lot with like relationships in the sense of, you know, maybe there's a commitment to a presence, but I can't predict exactly how much that presence is, or how much I can give, or how much you should give, and how much is a give and take, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, in a way, what we were saying before about slowness.
It's not about giving yourself up completely. Yeah.
That we were saying before about slowness is also about size, and what you're saying about care and presence. I mean, like, I can completely like understand and relate to these limits that you're saying. I mean, I have also had some experiences where we were a small group and we were able to do certain things because we were a small group, and we were able to, in a way, like hold each other and pay attention to each other and slow down the process enough, and that you would not be able to do that with 50 people, as you're saying it. So maybe it has to do also with size. Like maybe it's not possible to do very large things with very large groups of people in this way that you're describing, or is it?
Yeah, I don't know, because I haven't. I think maybe it's possible, maybe it's not possible. I haven't really gotten there yet to be able to like definitively say. Or maybe there's other ways of doing it. You know, maybe there's more. I don't know. Maybe there's more staggered ways, or maybe there's ways in which the slowness is brought more into it, or maybe it is a question of scale. That I'm not completely sure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would also like, maybe I would maybe ask you the same thing, actually.
No, I just feel like what you were saying was making a lot of sense. Like this dimension of intimacy and attention, which has to do with really this wanting to be closer. You've said that sentence, and holding this encounter, and sometimes even like balancing or wondering inside whether you actually want to become friends more than fix the bike, or both at the same time, or build the tower, or become more friends with someone. And I think that somehow has to do with a proximity which is in a way untenable with lots of many different things at the same time, simultaneously. Like you can't be like having conversations with 12 people at the same time. It's really difficult. Maybe an octopus can do it, but we can't. No, we have limitations as humans as well. And that's what I think that in a way like speaks of these limitations of size, and I find that a really interesting thread, like to also like think that maybe that some of these kind of like protocols of architecture have to do with I don't know, like a kind of like sliding towards large projects, which is what has happened, no? From some people building their own like long houses in settlements many years ago, to the kinds of like managed projects that we know of today that end up with building hundreds of apartments. No? I think that there's a huge gap, and maybe that also has to do with some of these things. But we don't have to like exhaust this thread. I just find it related to some of the things that you've said about intimacy, and I think it's a really nice like potential like discussion. No? But there's many more things. I think that what you've been saying about the relationship with technicities and the relationship with the discipline of architecture and And this willingness to engage with both what is going on in proximity with these people and these things that are there, but also with things that have happened before, memories and conditions and things that we want to bring back or hold alive, as opposed to architecture's obsession with the future through projection, which is what drawings do. And then you were also saying it, no? Like you were referring to drawings and to how difficult maybe it was to think about those CAD drawings and how they are almost like contracts, so that you make a drawing and it's like, okay, now this is what we're gonna do. And then you can't change it. No? It feels like you can't change it so much. So you can change some things, but you cannot change so much. As opposed to like, let's just get together, let's do something, and we don't know what it is going to be, and we don't know what it looks like yet. We don't have that contract. And I find that also like really, really interesting, no? So the kind of opposite relationship. Architecture insists in the future and in projection, and what you're proposing in a way is something that engages with the present, with the now, which is of course also the PDB's this year's PDB's main kind of like focus, present, but also the past, no? And that I find also really wild in a beautiful way.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Anna?
Yeah, I was I agree with Alberto. I think maybe the difficult task is to get rid of some kind of protocols that generate certain repeated tasks that lead to repeated projects, and start like you, because it's a small, very inspiring project for us, generating things with these connections and wanting to be closer to reality. This type of, or these attitudes can lead, I think, to bigger projects with these tasks and with these encounters that are not I mean, generated by the way you should relate, like you said, you should relate, but by the way you relate, because you relate, you know, you prefer this or that, you engage with this, it depends on many things. So maybe to get rid of these spins that are going on can generate. And in this sense, I always think about this complexity of places that are cities, where you have so many people living and working and being able to engage in certain projects or ways of viewing. And I'm fascinated by how do you deal with this? How can you deal with this? Because in general, architects and people, urbanists and people that deal with space don't choose not to deal with this. They choose not to deal with the mud, I think. The mud that is the dreams, the desires, the unconscious, let's say, of what is there and what is in other people's, what is occurring in the people they relate with. So we choose, we erase, even the way we draw in white papers that are kind of very linear kind of drawings without any dust, or with this rigidity is a way of taking us out of this world that belongs to us, that is human, unconscious, wild, where we can have and produce some kind of authenticity. I don't like the word, but I mean, some kind of not artificiality that is beautiful, but far away from dreams, desires, real relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, I felt it, and I feel like I identified it quite early on from being in architecture, which this anxiety to want to control things, which I feel like I connect so much also to like abusive relationships with like this anxiety to control things, or this like entitlement, like white supremacist kind of idea of like also this anxiety to want to control things, or maybe this this feeling of supremacy or entitlement, or also this like this sort of Dutch or maybe like liberal American anxiety to like be guardians of like law and order or morality, right? This wanting to like that you can't like leave this administering away the world or designing away the world, it's like hatred of life in some ways, and I think if you're able to like go into this space of like I want to like let go of this ability to want to control things or other people or the future or projections, then maybe then you can get into the space of this presence, right? And then I think to do that you need to like stop being white, you need to stop being like a man, maybe even you need to stop being an architect, and you need to become something else, because I think those are the things that are like fucking it up or getting in the way of this relationship, which is made in the mud, which is like made through like generosity and reciprocal something. Like I want to like begin something, not because I want to order and control how it's going to go, but because I want there to be a structure and a space for us to begin and continue and endure and these types of things. So in that sense, it's like the tower and the bike shop or these other things, they're not like, to stress it again, they're not like unplanned, right? It's not like once you leave this space of drawing and axonometric projection that all of a sudden you're going into a space of just randomness. You're going into an alternative space of planning, right? It's not unplanned. We're very much thinking about what do we want? What do you care about? What are our problems? Because we have problems that are affecting us, and we have our own specific problems, and we have different problems, and these are shared and they overlap in different ways. And that's also part of this like wild attention and care, is how do we recognize these differences of problems and also the sharedness of these problems? Like there's a brokenness we share, and the brokenness also disrupts the equality of our relation to these problems. So it's just a skill to then inhabit that space, and your ability to respond to that is what you could say produces like your ethics in how you approach this planning thing. So then you are within this specific place of thinking about these very specific relations that you have to, whatever. Maybe we want to make a studio in the top of this tower because we want the space to work because all of the cafes are closed and we can't pay and afford studio space. So let's build our own studio space. But maybe we also want spaces for this, that, and the other. So there can be this very specific, and that's maybe a mundane problem, but we can like have a specific thing, but we don't know exactly what that studio is going to be like. We don't know exactly how we're going to make it. We don't know exactly when or something. But I think joining that formation process is maybe, and I would say joining with, instead of like necessarily, I mean, maybe it's a design if you want to like extend or expand upon what design means. Maybe design is to like be in this affectual state. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe like a side thread from that, I think, is this generosity or curiosity, which I think we were kind of saying at certain points, because I think that's and that maybe comes back to, I think, this this care, caring, not caring, right? I mean, I think I would want to move away from this sort of care, which is a sort of moral obligation, right? And duty, and more towards a care that you want to care.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that comes from this sort of like, you know, I give you a gift and you want to respond to the gift, right? So the gift is it's a different kind of debt, right? It's not a coercive debt. I mean, hopefully not, unless it's like blackmail or something. But it's a debt you want to repay, and that indebts us to each other in this way that produces a relationship, right? And that's a very kind of like strong thing that is nice to like be getting to a project that is not like contractually based or something. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wanted to return also to some of these things you were saying about speed and change, which I thought were interesting, and also these, yeah, somehow the tower doesn't really care how the relationships are. I think that's an interesting thing. I mean, I think we could dissect also this whole notion of care, or how that can cut both ways also.
I mean, we've
yeah,
been so
I'm not
far,
sure,
yeah. We don't need to
where-
exhaust all of the themes, but and we've been talking about the tower and the project of the tower for a long time, and I know that you've been also now, or that you're still involved in this bike messaging project, which in a way has lots of things which are in common, but that maybe has also these other notions of correspondence and endurance and exhaustion built into it, and maybe you would like to say a few things about that and about that project and how that project maybe relates to these things. I think in a way it also relates to what you were just saying of speed. That's why I'm bringing it up, and slowing down. Like if you're saying that you're going to deliver these messages to these people, and then that involves like most of the times having conversations with them, then there's a kind of extension throughout time of the engagement, and that slows down other things, no? Like the speed of that is maybe it's also like double-sided, because then you're maybe probably like biking really fast to get to this specific address, and then and that trajectory is a fast one, but then the encounter is long and the conversation is slow if the other persons are engaging with it, no? So this is also like a gift in. I like those things. Like there's this kind of like two sides also of the speed.
Yeah,
but tell us about that project if you want.
Yeah, I know that you're very into this like intensity, which I think goes against what many people would maybe think intensity necessarily means, right? Because yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because it has these moments of slow and fast, and not necessarily because you're going fast means that you're that it's not care. Also, that's
yeah.
Or also there's a difference also in that, and also how like you respond to things. Like for instance, if I'm having a panic attack, the thing that I want to do is I want to run, for instance. You know, other people like might want to like stay and breathe in one spot or something. So it's like different modes of how they reply to these things. Yeah, the bike messenger project that Alberto is mentioning is that it's with two friends of mine from a collective We Work Not, Arvind Pourbasi and Golnar Abasi. They curated an exhibition at Showroom Mama in Rotterdam last year, and in before, during, and after the exhibition, it took on this type of wider life of the artwork, not as being something which is just hanging on the wall. It's like this dead like final thing, or like this funeral, as a friend of mine just put it. But it instead was kind of being like given a certain speed, actually, by then being delivered to everybody. But then it became more than this, and then people were like also producing things to then send to each other, and then the list kept growing, and then now we're like delivering to like 40 people, and they're like sending personal notes to each other. They're also making things for everybody, and it's like this alternative way of distribution of art, or also like knowledge. And for me, I'm noticing like there's very particular things that are produced within this particular exchange, or in this like moving between places, these conversations that kind of continually pick up between different times, different months, you know, because there's a delay in the delivery. There's also a delay in my visit, but you still have this extended correspondence. And then there's sometimes people that cycle with me, and then they come to different houses, and then they leave, and then the conversations that we have as we cycle to these different places, and we're enduring through this exhaustion together. And it is, of course, this balance of how do we go fast, when do we go slow, because we should get to someone's house before it's too late. And I mean, all these things that are quite like normal. But I think it's nice to pay attention to like how there are specific types of knowledges that are produced within that act of doing those things that kind of wouldn't necessarily happen otherwise. It's a sort of in the sort of movement space also. I don't know, it's something about these knowledges that are made through like durations or something, and these maps which are like kind of in process of being made and written. Because I also have like this manifest document that kind of charts where I'm going and what deliveries I need to take to certain places. And the map was also containing like notes that people were sending to each other. It was also containing a little bit of a map of like literally where I travel, and it was containing a log of what happened at each house that I visited to kind of just keep track of things. So this document was both the sort of instructions or like keeping track of what I needed to have to give to certain people. Otherwise you forget. But it's also like the documentation of what's happening. So it's both documenting the doing and doing the doing, which is happening across these different scales and these different like time periods. And I don't know, you could also say a lot about, you know, the kind of history of bike messengers as this job, which is a job based on exhaustion, but then that job is kind of turned into a community which is coming together around this shared exhaustion, and turning that exhaustion into something which is actually kind of like life-giving in a way, because then there's a certain type of like gain that is made out of the cycling around, and there's a certain kind of like affectual state that you only get into when you get to a certain level of exhaustion. And then it's like, okay, how can we like do this exhaustion for ourselves and for each other, instead of these lawyers that want us to deliver their documents to each other?
Yeah, I think this is really beautiful, and I find it, if I may, I mean, you can otherwise like continue, but there's something really beautiful about this, what you were calling this affectual state that comes through intense forms of intimacy or intense forms of exhaustion or exercise or yeah, like intense activity, and the way in which that this shift in affectual state enacts a shift also in the ways we think through things, so that the kinds of knowledges that emerge from those states or those shared states are different. It's different kinds of knowledge. And I think that to pay attention to those kinds of knowledges, as opposed to maybe the static knowledge of whatever the exhibition, no, or this idea of exhibition as funeral, it's really powerful. I think that that is great, no? In a way, like the relationship between something that might be hanging on a wall as part of an exhibition and the conversation that someone has about something that has to do with it remotely, but that is enabled through having biked for an hour or whatever very fast through certain places and having had a few conversations. And how can we like acknowledge, yeah, the kind of power of that kind of knowledge, no? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it also, I think in a sense, sometimes also kind of gives visibility to the things that are a part of the, like, let's say, art production, you know, which is, you know, everything that kind of goes into, like, you know, the conversations and the moods and the transportation of things and the labor of things that goes into those things that hang on the wall. I mean, it's also kind of like moving into that space also, that's kind of like a part of that, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, I think, I don't know, everything I want to do is I just want to like feel things, and I want to like make the spaces and possibilities to feel those things and then share those things with other people. So yeah, I don't know. when projects can kind of be an excuse or a mediator to like extend those things, I mean, I just think that, like, what else is the point if it's not to like, and there are things that of course get in the way of that, right? Which are like these kind of, you know, these whatever institutions or histories of violence or colonialism or so on and so forth, or these control anxieties, which need to kind of be like in some way counteracted by engaging in these things. But yeah, I don't know, that's what I find like the struggles to get to those spaces of affecting the world in a way which makes it worth living, you know, which is, I think, maybe is connected with like this aesthetics of bewilderment that that's maybe you've been talking about, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, the aesthetics of bewilderment is I mean, it's the amazement and the about being lost, being amazed, being in a maze, being in search for these spaces where you are lost. No? So anything can happen. You can feel, and you can feel. You are liberated to feel. I mean, I think the processes that you showed were kind of very precious within this exhibition, or the stories that we picked for the exhibition. I don't know. I mean, I'm totally happy with the way we talked about these spaces that are so delicate and specific. Really hard to talk about this, I think, for me. It's not easy to grasp these waves that are, how can I say, coming out from or all the repercussions and waves that are coming out from these processes, like inside, outside. And I thank you for this talk. For me, it was very special.
Thank
Alberto.
Yeah, it'd be nice to
No,
connect in person at some point.
Yeah.
Then of course it's a different affection.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that there's something like when you were saying this thing, I want to feel things, and how the projects become an excuse or a mediator for that. And And now your experience is teaching at William de Kooning Academy and with the students. And how does it translate, or how do you like bring this I want to feel things to the space of the academy in Rotterdam and to this pedagogical space? Can you like think through that a little bit with us? Because I find it also like both like necessary and appealing, and I'm for that as well. But at the same time, I find that also increasingly difficult within the hyper controlled and regulated spaces of pedagogy, where feelings, affections, and these things are almost like evacuated by design.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, it's also that I wanted to kind of like turn around and ask you some questions at one point, but
you can also do that. You can also do that.
But I mean, I will kind of, I don't know, I will kind of respond to you in a way that it's also kind of introducing the questions I want to bring up, because I wanted to ask also, like, what does wild do to care, or what does wild do to architecture in this way? Because I mean, I'm thinking about, you know, wild as this sort of sort of space that cuts both ways, or also like this sort of untamability, or this thing that you can just agree to be with. You can't really like necessarily control, and this agreeing to be with is kind of moving with the sort of kind of contrasts that are already within the wild, or within these spaces, or like pedagogical spaces. For instance, I mean, I don't know, I think for when I'm teaching, I find it quite difficult to also not to like you're fitting within, you're performing a certain role within the academy also, so you have to be like aware of this, and I think that's in a lot of my courses, I'm focusing on how are we kind of responding to each other, and how do we do that together as like a course, and also how do we pay attention to like formation processes, in a sense that how are things formed, and how can we form things otherwise, right? That things are, we are formed within a world, we are situated within a world that is, of course, has a lot of violent colonial histories and so on and so forth. But yet we if we understand these mechanisms and techniques of like how it's been formed, we can maybe also then start to like work with those things and form them differently. But I think the most spaces in which I have like connected with my students has been like, or not just my students, but just the academy or other people that are there, and all the different ways that they're there, and the different relations they have to the academy, which might be, you know, coordinators and staff and alumni and students and master students and so on. So then it's not like a sort of relationship of I am this and you are that, but we have different relations to this thing, maybe, or relations to where we are. I think for me, this has happened when we were like protesting the academy, because there were some students that were holding a banner saying that to free Palestine and end the ethnic cleansing, and the institution was kind of blocking their ability to hang this banner, and even threatening to like bring in the police for even holding the banner inside of the glass on the inside of their own studio. So then we were saying, okay, where's the inside and the outside of the institution? You can't, you know, you can't even put something on the fire escape. It's crazy. And who gets to say what, and who gets to decide these things? And then we were like making these assemblies with the students and with everyone else to kind of like engage with these things, and having these decolonial like reading sessions and so on. So for me, I found the spaces in this way, where you start to kind of just in a way produce your own school. Which is maybe a bit wild, because you're kind of making the curriculums, you're making this assembly, and when you're making assemblies, we had an assembly of some 100 people to get to hear everybody is very difficult. I mean, you have to like have protocols and procedures actually, but the protocols and procedures need to then be flexible to be able to have these conversations and assemblies and so on. And I think that you also have to be aware of how care discourse is also quite often recuperated in order to kind of keep certain systems in place, right? Because there can be this kind of coercive care, which is like, I'm going to care for you because you're incapable of caring for yourself type of care, or so on. But yeah, I don't know, maybe this is a kind of long thread to kind of open or continue to go into, but if there was time, I would love to ask you what would you do in such a situation? What do you think Wild does to care? But yeah.
No, but I think we can probably like jump quickly into that before we finish, or at least before we finish this live streaming. And at least I can say something. I mean, I also want to kind of respond to what you're asking, and for me, it has a lot to do with some of the things that you have said. That the main reason for in the first place to try to put something attached to care was precisely what you said before, of like trying to escape or deviate from those forms of care that you have just mentioned that are like oppressive or can turn into oppression, because they are not wanted. Like, it's not that you want to care, but it is that you have a duty to care. And these are the forms of care that we are surrounded with, that are based on protocols of administration and management of care. Care understood as a kind of form of help, as a form of management, as a form of protocolized attention. And then by putting the wild attached to it, we were hoping that it was like a way also of making it much more genuine engagement with the intimacy, with being close to others, and granting them attention, not out of a protocol or of a pre-established protocol, but out of like, I'm here and I'm going to pay attention to you because I want to pay attention to you, and that's going to lead to whatever results and whatever forms of being with you, and I will have to invent those ways of being with you based on my attention to what I'm saying, what I'm seeing or witnessing, and that's wild, because you need to adjust every second. You need to kind of invent and reinvent every second how you do it. For me, that's also like what Wild points to, that it is somehow to do with formlessness, that there is no form yet. So we need to kind of figure out how this is going to be, which requires a kind of attitude or condition or endurance, or I don't know, many things, and you need to kind of say, yes, fine, I'm going to cope with that, and hopefully with architecture it does the same. It's just that it does it maybe in a more specific way, because care is maybe not a profession and a discipline, hopefully, yet, even though it almost resembles one in some moments, but architecture is much more a profession and a discipline. So the established protocols of architecture are really, really, really clear and specific and strong. So for me, while architecture is one that partly escapes from these protocols, yeah, something like that. I don't know if Ana agrees either, but at least that's my own.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think the part of receiving the kind of a task to talk about care in architecture was very, at the same time, very, very hard to deal with, because it's now some kind of word that serves everything, and we wanted to shape it like directly into a certain universe of practices, and not just architectural, but well, and I agree totally with Alberto that this, I mean, that being a way of this or recreating these ways of doing or escaping these protocols is a field of that this project is interested in. Okay, the protocol is finding us, like, this conversation needs to it's finding this conversation too long, and I think they are concerned and right, maybe.
No, things things can have their end without necessarily. We also always need to leave at certain points, so it's
they continue.
Yeah.
I think it's also something that has appeared in the conversation that there's no such thing as this, like, space of total freedom or of randomness or of absence of a relationship with certain institutions, or institutions as like institutions in the sense with the capital I, or institutions as protocols, like is an institution as well. And we always have to deal with things, and those things pre-exist us, and it's about how do we, like, decide to, I mean, you were saying, the ethics of how do you develop a way to dealing with these things, no? Yeah, so I guess that we need to finish the streaming, and that is an imponderable that we have to, like, just deal with.
Yes.
But it's been great. I think it's actually been really inspiring to listen to you, Tomi, and so I'm really thankful that you found the time to join us and share some of your thoughts and experiences with us. So thank you for being today here. Thank you very much, Ana, for being here, and thank you everyone who might be listening or might be thinking with us elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you I just wanted to say I also have, like, this book here.
Wow, fantastic.
Which has, like, I wanted to say earlier, has been, like, quite a inspiration that I have kept going back to, actually, and I have been, like, sharing it with my students the past semester, actually.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm
happy about
very, very, like, glad to have this conversation, and hope we can continue.
We will continue.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Yes. See you.
See you soon.